All right. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and come into the conversation. We'd love to have you participate. Today, we're going to talk about getting buyers and sellers off the fence. And so I want to hear from a couple of you real quick. This is going to be participating, you engaged with me in the conversation. We're going to make it just that, a conversation. And what are your experiences right now? What's keeping people on the fence right now?
Well, let's talk about interest rates first, of course, because they keep going up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
they go up, they come down a little, and they go up some more, and they come down again. And, and then here's the interesting thing, what's the past, present, and future of interest rates, that we get to help people understand so that they make better decisions, so that they do get off of that fence. So today, we're going to get into a conversation about how do we move people forward today. It's only natural that people be a little fearful. There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of confusion with everything that the media throws at our clients and us every day. We know that things get sensationalized. And so today, well, let me pull up some slides. I'm going to tell you about the journey we're going to go on today. And let me go ahead and get that up here. Is my audio and everything coming through okay, everyone? Mm-hmm. Crystal clear?
Yes.
Okay. And so when we think about getting people off the fence, and let's talk about the journey we're going to navigate today. So today, and I think there needs to be an apostrophe in there, so I think I missed that, excuse me. Today, it's the real estate economist consultation. So, Gary has told us for years, he said, our job is to show up and be the trusted advisor, the local real estate economist of choice, as Gary says. In fact, he takes it a step further and he says, we've got to be the hyper-local trusted real estate economist of choice. And so we're going to venture into how do we deliver that experience with our consumers in a way that will helps them get more certainty in a time when things are a little uncertain. Oops. Yeah. Hang on. Then we're going to look at some of the messages that we have to put out. What are the messages we're going to put out that match our market, that help get people to the kitchen table? We're going to get the right offers that, help draw people in so that we can have the conversations that we need to have. And then we're going to talk about what I call the perfect pricing conversation today, and how we're going to take folks and walk them through this journey of getting the right price. And how do we get the right price every single time in a market that's going through a lot of change? In fact, Megan, I'm going to go ahead and spotlight myself, so we'll have this. So how do we navigate this in a way that we make our job easier, and we make the lives of our clients less stressful? And it means that we have to slow down and bring them this certainty that they don't have. We have to focus on building a relationship built on trust. And let me introduce myself. My name's Steve Schlueter. In fact, I'm the bowl coach that's going to be coming out to Burlington, Greensboro here on April 5th, I believe it is. I'll be coming out to your area. And a little background on myself. I'm a veteran of about 5 or 6 shifting markets now. I've lost count. I've got over 30 years in the real estate industry. I started at age 23, became one of the top 5 RE/MAX agents at in the state of Texas before making a move to Keller Williams. And I had the good fortune to, as I came into Keller Williams, be transitioning into leadership. Gary Keller had recruited me to lead one of his offices in Austin, and I became the team leader of the Austin Northwest Market Center. And in the 4.5 years that we were there, Real Trends ranked us, one of those years, as the 4th highest producing real estate office in the country in terms of units. And so productivity is kind of my thing. As an agent, I've done as many as 102 home sales in a year. So that's a little background about Steve. I'm part of the Keller Williams University Master Faculty. I've got a group coaching program called Never Ending Referrals, and I'm the creator of DTD2, the DTD2 system that you might be familiar with. So let's go into a very foundational piece of today's discussion. And I'm going to go back to my screen. And as we go into this, I want to pull up this triangle, something we call the trust triangle. And by the way, you're going to get at the end of this, you're going to get a link to a Google folder that has all these slides. It's got a consulting guide example for you. You're going to have all the things that we go through here today. So don't feel like you have to do a bunch of screenshots and, just be present and we'll send all this to you so you don't have to go digging around. Make good notes and we'll go from there. So this thing called the trust triangle, let's talk about this for a moment. And this comes from the Harvard Business Review. And the Harvard Business Review did an article on how leaders establish trust with those that they led. And as I heard Gary Keller and Jay Papasan having a conversation about this in a leadership session I was in, it occurred to me that this is the way we build trust with the people we have in our database. This is the way we build trust with our clients, and we establish trust throughout the transaction or new people that are in our pipeline. And it starts this way. It's logic. And the logic point over here says, I know you can do it. Your reasoning and judgment are sound. And then on the empathy point, the empathy piece is, I believe you care about me and my success, my well-being. And authenticity is they feel like they're experiencing the real you. Remember that every person we deal with, folks, has got a BS detector, right? Believability scale, because they're sniffing out, do I believe this person? Do they feel genuine? And it's so critical that, especially in sensitive times, that they have somebody that they believe and they believe in. And so it's so important that they experience you in an authentic way. And you being you, not being somebody else, not being a salesy person. So let's talk about the logic point for a second. So the logic point, I want you to make a note. It's the what part of the logic point is your messaging. What is the messaging that I'm putting out to my database that communicates that I do understand the market, that I have a perspective that they can trust, that they will listen to? And the how you do this is your 36 touch. It's your 36 to 52 touch system that is going to deliver that message that you put out. Now, on the empathy side, I want you to write this down on the empathy. Empathy is going to occur when we're genuinely in relationship with people. And I want you to write this down. The conversation is the relationship. The conversation is the relationship. And that's something comes from Susan Scott in her book, Fierce Conversations. And she says every relationship succeeds or fails one conversation or one missing conversation at a time. And so right now, in a time that we're in right now, what we're going to go through today is the conversations are vital, the ones that we have, and that people actually feel cared about. And so it's the care calls. It's using the Ford model effectively, and then weaving your message into those conversations. So not only do they know they're cared about, you're still able to deliver the message about what's going on in our economy and our market today as well. And then authenticity is just us coming from a service mentality first. Gary said it, service first, sales second. And they feel that. They feel like they're put first. And we do deliver our messages. We talk about real estate in a way that is coming from contribution and caring for them. And we do it being genuinely us. And so that being said, I want to share with you. I'm going to get your phones out. We'll put the link in the chat too. If you're on a phone watching this and you can't, get the QR code. Would y'all agree that we've had enough things going up and down, and then the next thing we get is this banking thing? Is that a little confusing for our people today?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And one of the things that you can do to deliver on the logic point is, inform them. And there's so much chatter out there. And so I want to give you this podcast, and if you need to move the pictures or anything so you can get this. So this podcast, the Pivot Podcast with Scott Galloway, this has been the best information around the Silicon Valley Bank failure that I have come across so far. And by the way, Scott Galloway is one of Gary's advisors. Gary listened to his podcast. Scott Galloway is a professor at NYU. He's a great analyst, really understands the economy, tech, and all of this. And so we'll put this in the chat as well. Megan, if you'll throw that in there if you haven't already. This is something that you could then send out to your database. And after you listen to it personally, saying, just like there's a lot of confusion out in our marketplace today, a lot of fears that get trumped up by the media. And, the latest thing has been, the Silicon Valley Bank failure. By the way, here's the best, information I've heard that gives the best explanation and really has put me at ease about where our banking system is today. And that would be a powerful logic point. And then you can deliver it in a way, put me at ease, that it's got that empathy language. You really have an opportunity to inform your folks, take away some of their fears, give them a little certainty, and you become a catalyst for helping them along this journey. So before we get into being the consultant, we're going through times when the consumer's confused, the market in some of our markets is in a shift, some markets it's a little stable, and yet that could pivot one way or the other at any moment. And I want to go through some perspective with you that I think is important to understand, because there's going to be some work to do in the months ahead for some of the things that I'm going to suggest. And with that being the case, I want us to have this perspective. So this slide was family reunion, February of 2022. And you'll see projected home sales all the way to the right. Projected home sales were 5.9 million. Whoops. I got a happy trigger finger here. Where the projected annual home sales was 5.9 million resale homes, existing homes. And then by the time we got to Mega Camp, they were projecting 5.1 million. That's an 800,000, 800,000 drop. And then when we got to family reunion this year, they reported an actual of 5 million. So from 6.1 million to 5 million. And you're going, okay, well, that's not so bad. And yet, and none of it's bad. It just is. It just is. It's a matter of how we adapt, how we adjust our strategy. These are opportunities for us right now as we go through changing times. But here's the interesting graph. How did we wrap up the year? And when you adjusted the annualized home sales, we had 5 million last year. And yet, as we were going through the latter part of the year, look at the fourth quarter. Annualized 4.4 million, 4.1 million, 4.0 million. So that's a 33% off of the 6.1 million, a little over 33% off the $6.1 million or 6.1 million unit place where we had been. And so when we think about this, well, let me give you some good news, some maybe not good news, and a choice. And here's where I think the rubber really meets the road. This year is projected, despite the decrease in units, to be the third highest year in sales volume ever. That's the good news. Then the questionable news is, are you going to get your unfair share of the third highest year in volume ever? Because let's go through these statistics. And I want you to hear this, because here's what happens. We had NAR grow to 1.6 million realtors as we went through this crazy time during the pandemic. Now we've had about, I think, 70 or 80,000 leave in the last 3 or 4 months. And yet last time when we went through a shift, 550,000, well, before that, as we were in a ramp up going prior to the Great Recession, we had 550,000 agents join the National Association of Realtors. And by the way, sides per agent dropped from 13.4 to 7.5 because we had many more agents pursuing the available transactions. Now, when we're going through the post-Great Recession times, NAR shed 330,000 agents. And there was a time in that window where units went from 6.9 average per agent when there were still a lot of agents. And as agents began to get shed, I love that word, it went to 9.3. So if you think about that, that's a 40% or so increase, for the agents that didn't leave the business on average. And then right now, as we had this run up since 2013, 580,000 agents have joined the National Association of Realtors, and sides dropped from 9.8 to 6.3. Now, here's the interesting thing. As we go through, are we going to shed another 300, 400,000 agents? Probably somewhere, in the 250 to 350 range. And what that means is right now, by being hyper intentional and getting your unfair share, not just riding the averages as they flow up and down, you're going to then carry that into the future as the market expands. And yet, if we just ride the market and we wait for equilibrium, well, eventually our average will come up if we're still in the business. And then as more and more agents get in, we'll get less. And so it's important just to have this perspective because it's this time where you have a choice. And the choice is, well, many agents are sitting there on the sidelines waiting for things to change. How do you become the catalyst for change? And that means you're having more conversations as a consultant that get people, off the fence and move them forward. And so what we've got to do is we get to this place where we have to get to more kitchen tables. We have to slow down the process and have a more thorough consultation with people today so that we can help alleviate their fears and help them move forward. Now, let's go back, and I'm going to go back to gallery view for a second so I can see all you guys. Hang on a second, let me do this. Okay, so I've got a question for you guys, and I want you to just, in the chat, and if you've got your camera off, I'd love for you to turn your camera on, be with us if you can. But here's my question. I want to know, in fact, let's use the chat for this. And you guys that are in the room, the training room, you can just put your thumbs up, thumbs down. And I want to know from you guys, are you an interest rate, and hear me out on this, are you an interest rate pessimist? Because we know interest rates is a big barrier right now. Are you an interest rate pessimist where you believe that we will likely not see sub 5% interest rates again in the next 2 to 5 years, maybe a decade? Or are you an interest rate optimist and you believe that we're going to see sub 5% interest rates probably within the next 24 months? So just give me a pass or an opt in the chat, or just let's find out, where are we? What's our feeling on this? Okay, we got a lot of optimists, love it. And I'm going to tell you why I'm asking in a minute, but I want you to choose a side. This is really important to this conversation. Whether you put it in here or you don't, take a position. Okay, it's mostly optimist. I like it. And here's my question. If we sit down with a prospective buyer do they want us to have a real opinion and real perspective on what the future of interest rates is? Or do we help them if we go, well, who knows? Nobody knows. And that becomes a recipe for them simply to stay stuck. And do you believe it's important? I do, that we take a position. But then, are we in a position to back up that position? So here's my question. I'd like somebody, if you're willing, to come on and just tell us, why are you an interest rate optimist? Why do you believe that we will be sub 5% within the next 12 to 24 months? Anybody want to make the case? Who's so convicted you're going to come and tell us why it's going to happen? Okay. All right. So no takers right now. Can I share with you why I'm an interest rate pessimist? Give me a thumbs up if you're good. All right. Way to go, Daniel. Daniel and company over there. I give them all those. So let's go through this. And I'm going to pull up something that you're going to get a copy of this. And it was something we developed to give clarity to our consumers. And let me see if I can take down this other thing here. Hang on a second. Too many things going. All right. Y'all seeing this thing that says San Antonio housing market, a window of opportunity?
Yep.
All right, good. So this is something that I developed for my agents because they were having trouble just doing what we're describing, making people feel more certain about the possibilities of the market, what they should or shouldn't do. Should they wait? Should they take action now? And so we went and we put together this San Antonio housing market, a window of opportunity. And by the way, we're going to give you a copy of this in PDF and PowerPoint form when we're done. We'll put a link in there. You can go download it. So you can edit it. You can put in your local information. And, if you find this useful. So knowing that, interest rates are one of the big conversations, it's the first thing we get to in the consulting guide. In fact, we have as part of the follow-up to this program, we will be sending you the YouTube playlist that goes with every single page that we built for our agents to help them. What are the questions that I use to engage my clients around this? What are the depth of understanding so that I can have conviction? Because again, if we're going to be the trusted real estate advisor, if we're going to be the local real estate economist of choice, we got to have meat behind what we believe. And so if you came to me and as a buyer, we're sitting down and said, hey, can I consult you on kind of what's going on in the state of our economy, things like interest rates? Because likely I put out a message and what we call a MOFR, a making offer for immediate response, that triggered the at least coming in for a no obligation consultation or strategy session. And when we sit down, I say, well, I'd like to walk you through what's going on in our market because, honestly, there's a lot of confusion out there. I think you would agree with, what you hear in the media and maybe what the real world is. And, the media is national and of course, real estate's local. And I'm going to start before I even get into, as I have this closed right here, I'm going to start with, what have you heard about the market? And just be quiet and see where their current perspective and understanding is. And so that if if you're going into something that's maybe contrarian to what they had believe or heard, and where you have to really reinforce based upon maybe their beliefs or perspective. And then I said, well, and obviously, what have you heard about interest rates? And do you have a feeling about where they're headed one way or the other? And most of them go, I don't know. It just seems to keep going up. We saw a little dip right now. That's why we thought we'd at least talk. So, well, let's talk about just where we believe interest rates are headed for us. And Megan, if you'll grab that admit, please. We got somebody there. I got it. Okay. So let's go here. And so I said, well, let's talk about interest rates. So you said you're really not certain, and let's get some perspective. And I'd like to walk you through the past, present, and future of interest rates. And a lot of people don't actually realize that as we sit here today at about 6.6% interest rate, we're just over 0.5% above what has been normal since about 1990. In fact, if you go back to 1990, interest rates average 5.97%. And of course, that includes, our low times that we've had recently. Since 2012, well, it's been averaging closer to 3.8. And of course, now we've come up. Last year we averaged, close to 6, not quite. And that, of course, that's for a whole year. And here's what I want to share with you about interest rates. And you'll notice that they took a dip below that average, and not before that, right after the Great Recession hit. And of course, we know that the federal government wants to stimulate the economy, to get things going again, especially when housing was in deep weeds there. And that economy, that real estate economy, it took till about 2012 to recover. And yet the thing that comes up frequently is, why didn't interest rates go back up after real estate recovered? And that's the great question that often people think, well, it should have just stayed low because it's been low for all this time. And are you familiar with what has held interest rates so low for so long until recently? And by the way, you want to ask questions. We want to get them engaged. And they're probably not going to really have an answer. It'll probably go, I'm not sure. I go, well, let me explain. And there's really a couple of things that were in force here. The first thing was, and it's written down here at the bottom of the guide, first was, of course, the economic stimulus to take us through the Great Depression and into recovery. And yet the challenge was inflation was not an issue. I shouldn't say the challenge. The gift was that inflation wasn't an issue. So there wasn't any reason to raise rates. Inflation was in check. Inflation was hovering 2.5%, 3% tops. And there was no pressure on interest rates. And our federal government fell in love with just stimulating the economy like crazy when COVID hit. So that was another reason then just to keep them low. And so without inflation, and then another reason to stimulate the economy, it just kept real estate or interest rates, mortgage rates pushed down because they didn't need to go up to manage monetary policy. And now so we know that inflation has been the key driver of why mortgage rates have had to come up, why interest rates have had to come up. And yet, let's go to the deeper issue. What are the real reasons we have inflation? So you can put it in the chat, or you can, come on and tell me what is driving inflation that may not go away anytime soon.
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand. That's supply and demand for everything, right? Whether it's cars or microchips or anything. What else? So where does 70% what drives 70% of our economy?
Is it the gross national product, the GNP?
Bing, 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 Cindy. So yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Bing, 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 bing. Yeah, you got it. Send her a prize, Megan.
Mhm.
It's the consumer spending.
Okay, you need to explain what the GNP, because most people might not know what that is.
Well, consumer price index, which is based upon consumer spending.
Mhm.
Then, of course, Ronald says here, we're more global now. So the supply and demand is more intertwined. So all of those factors come into play. But here's the big issue. People say, well, the consumer. And yeah, that's another thing. That's one thing, because there's more people spending more money and they're not letting up on spending. And there's a reason for that. The other thing is, who's been to the local Chick-fil-A and you go through the Chick-fil-A and you see the sign up there, and 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, starting wages $12 an hour, $11 an hour. What is it now? Like 17?
Yeah.
And it's, I've watched it go up at all my local places around here, now hiring, and they keep raising the entry wage for these things to $16, $17, $18 an hour. And that means that puts more money out there for the CPI to go up, the consumer price index, more spending. And yet that's not the real issue. The real issue is demographics. And I'm going to share something with you. What's that, Cindy?
The elderly population are getting older,
Mm-hmm.
and the younger people are not paying into the economy. Is that what you're trying?
Well, we're going to cover
kind
this, Cindy, because you're really close on this. You're getting this. And let me go back to my slides, because the next thing I'm going to do to get in the conversation is I'm going to educate them. Now, let me explain to you why interest rates haven't come back up. Number one, inflation was in check. Of course, then we had COVID era stimulus, which actually put a lot of money in the economy, which means the consumer spent and spent and spent as we came out of COVID. Of course, we had supply chain issues, which drove prices up, fuel up, diesel up. And so wages are now up. And yet the real thing driving this, and let me explain to you why I think that we're pretty clearly going back to 5.97 and maybe a little above is normal again. And we're going to go a little above and maybe a little below. And here's what drives that. And so here's my question for you guys. Do I have anybody on here that's between the ages of 31 and your mid 40s? And I'm sure we've got a bunch of you. And that's called the family formation years. And then you've got, as you get into your mid 40s, early 50s, you've got family, college, kids, cars, all, insurance, all this for all your whole family. And then this is work done by an economist named Harry Dent. And when I was a team leader, having Gary Keller for an OP is a really interesting world. Because Gary made us study demographics. He said there are a lot of things that impact the world and world economies, nothing more so than the demographics of our society. And Harry Dent was somebody who authored a lot of study on this. And his thesis is this, that as you get into these family formation and college, age kids and late 40s, early 50s, these are your peak spending years. So to Cindy's point, the consumer is most powerful when they are in those years spending lots of money. Well, let's go back and see how that applies back to what we talked about before. Well, the baby boomer, they were a force from 1992 to 2008. Now, this blue graph, that's taking birth cycles and lagging it 48 years for peak spending. So the person right here at the very top of where my cursor is was born 48 years earlier than this year that is indicated right here. And so you'll see the boomers were peaking out in the mid 2000s, and they started coming out of their peak spending years. And because they were spending less, there wasn't pressure on inflation. Right now, we're in this trough right here at the bottom. And some of the factors are that this boomer generation now is retiring earlier than planned during the COVID time in some cases, leaving the workforce. And this gap in between here was, I believe that was Gen Z or X, whatever it was called, was a very low birth cycle population. And that's why we're having, trouble replacing the boomers in some of these, jobs and skilled jobs in some of these areas. And yet look what's getting ready to happen. We've got a force of millennials that are already in their family formation years right now. So they've moved from, they're moving through this. In 2025, the early millennials are going to start moving into their peak spending years. And that force is going to go on for at least 10, 12, potentially, if you look at this, 20 years. And the amount of consumption that's going to be available to be had because of what our population is doing is going to be a major force. And so what that means is, well, inflation pressure is going to be there, folks. And so understanding that becomes vital. Now, I'm going to give you this guide. I'm not going to go through all of this, and I just wanted to give you a perspective of, this is why, for example, now I'm a real estate pessimist. I mean, I'm not a real estate. I'm an interest rate pessimist, because I can make the case that we're going to have a situation where inflation is going to be hard to tap down, and rates are likely to stay elevated. Might they come down a little? Yes. Will they go sub 5? Probably not. Then we talk supply and demand. I mean, my San Antonio market, San Antonio needs 65,000 more homes to have a healthy housing market. So use headlines, and then maybe you have to counter some headlines in some of these stories as well. The census data, San Antonio, biggest numeric population growth, and take the headlines out and put them out there. A Forbes article on how a recession may not impact housing prices dramatically in some markets. Where are we related to where we've been in the past? And by the way, we have 3 times more choices right now in our San Antonio market. I know your market's a little different. We're going to look at that. We're addressing, are we overvalued? By the way, it's one of these things too right now where I'm going to come back to this one, because I have one of my markets where it is still overvalued. And yet in San Antonio, I make the case that, our median price is 305, or it actually just came up to 310. And we're well below the median home value. And yet we're one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas. It's reasonable to say that San Antonio is moving towards the national trend. And so overvalued, probably not. Discounted homes in the market, and then a summary of everything that I would have taken them through. And so here you have a little consulting guide that walks them right through it. Now, in another one of my markets, I'm also in Austin. I've just put this graph together, and we peaked at 510,000 in Williamson County, where my market centers are. The current is 510,000. We peaked at 510. We're currently at 410. And then I did some hypothesizing. I said, well, if we had had more normal appreciation, yet high appreciation, maybe 8.5% from 2000 through, 2024, where would we be? In January 25, we would be at 418. Well, that's less than 2 years away. And yet we're off a peak of 510. We probably ought to be at the end of the year really closer to 385. We probably have a little downside to go. And yet, how do I get somebody to take and pull the trigger when I can't make a case that we're not overvalued? And I'm going to show you how you do that. And I'm going to share with you all a slide on this. As soon as I get it built, I'll give it to you as a follow-up. Let me see if I can go to my document camera. So here's this is in the Shift book. I believe it's page 172. And it's timing the market. And there's this little place called the safe zone. And you'll notice it talks about markets go up.
Did anyone see that? I'm so sorry. It's just a very small box for me. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, go to your 3 dots on your screen and put pin it, and then you'll see it full screen.
Okay, thank you. So sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, so if you want to see it full screen, just go to the 3 dots up in the upper corner of your video and pin, and it'll come up full screen. And so, this talks about just real estate cycles. And you notice this little gray dot, it's here, it says point of realization the market is shifted. So we don't know the market often has shifted down until it starts to occur. So let's just say we're at this point right here was when the market started to take a turn with interest rates. And, you know, the people that bought the very top, well, it says those were the unlucky, that's the unlucky zone. We're past the unlucky zone. Would y'all agree? And then, of course, the ones who say, let me wait till it hits bottom, we don't know it's hit bottom until it starts to come where? Back up, and it's made that turn. And so somewhere in here is the safe zone. And I would say that most of our markets are probably here and maybe even getting into the lucky zone in some cases. And so we're going to put a slide out for you on this, but this came to me today. I said, I know there's a graph out there, and somebody that when we've lost, we've given back 100,000 of what we've gained. Okay, it's probably time. And yeah, we might lose a little bit more. And what are you going to give up if you wait? What you're probably going to give up if you wait is you're going to have fewer choices. Interest rates, because of the pressures that are out there, are likely going to be higher. And maybe it's a good time today where you still have some negotiating leverage. So that's the consulting guide. We're going to make that available to you. Again, I'll have a link for you at the end of this. I do want to go through a couple of things for you for perspective on your market, because here's the next piece of this. And let me pull my PowerPoint back up. Let's see if we can get to the right one. So let's take a look at Burlington for a second. Now, one of the things I want us to look at, and you'll have to apologize, I don't have access to all your stuff stats-wise, so it says from Redfin here, so naughty on me. But I pulled some data on Burlington, and I know Burlington's, you've got surrounding areas and all this, but let's look at some of the interesting, because what we need to do now is if we're going to consult people, well, we can only consult them if we get to the kitchen table or we get them into the office. And so that means we have to have some messages that we put out to the market and an offer that invites them into a conversation with us. And so what we're going to explore, what are some potential messages that we might put out to your market? So if we take a look at Burlington, well, look at where you are. Your median price peaked in June at $295,000. Today, you're at $247,750. That's 16% off the peak. That's a powerful message. And if I were to go out and say, Burlington home prices, 16% off peak, the time of opportunity is now. There's a message that matches my market, maybe allows people to discover something they didn't know. Did you know this, that it was 16% off peak? And this is part of us having to be the economist. We got to know this data. So let's go to the next one. Here's another one. This is Burlington still. In April, your list to sales price ratio was 105.3, if you'll see at the bottom of the screen. Today, it's 99.7. Still really good for sellers. Whoops. 99.7. And yet this one, I think about a message here. Anybody got a thought? What would be a great message here to put out? If you knew that in April, people were spending 105.3% a list, and today it's only 99.7% a list, what would be a message that we would put out that would match that opportunity? Who wants to chime in? Okay, I'm gonna give you one. I would put market takes a breath for buyers. Current trends reveal that it's not necessary to pay above list price. And yet we know some are and some aren't, and the average is 99.7. And so I might make a case the best 20% of homes or best 30% of homes are getting full price and above offers. And yet overall, as an average, you've got more breathing room today as a consumer. It's not crazy. It's not bidding up as it was. So that could be a message. And then we look at Greensboro. You know, Greensboro, you're 18.3% off a peak. You were 275, 250 back in April. You're 225 today. And by the way, here's another big statistic right here. Number of homes sold, this is for I believe, February, versus year over year, down 28.6%. If I go back and look at Greensboro, you're really in pretty good shape. I mean, Burlington, rather, you're really in pretty good shape there. That's 1 month's picture. And yet with things going on in the economy, that could shift. And so always be looking at what are my messages that I can put out. Burlington, Greensboro, here's another one. Home sold above list was 30.4%. Home sold above list price down 30%, 34.1%. Homes with price drops, 30%. So that means we're not getting the right price up front because 30% are having to drop their price. And again, you'll see that you are 104.5% of list, and you're also at 99.7% now as you follow along this trend. And so what do we think are some possible messages here? And so here's a few. If you want to screenshot this one, you're going to have the slides, but I think, you know, Gary Keller, here's what Gary Keller told us. And I've been through so many shifts, and I know this to be true. He said it's the agent who's putting out the right messages that match the market of right now that will win the market. And they're going to combine those messages with a MOFR, which stands for make offer for immediate response, that draws the consumer in to at least have a conversation with you. So based upon some of the things we just looked at, here's some possible messages to match your market. Buyers get breathing room, and you can build that off the list to sales price ratio. One of the most stable markets in the US and North Carolina. When you see that steadiness of list to sales price ratio, it's not a hard hit market. It has come off peak, and yet great market. Affordability. Local median price versus national. So if the national median price is $359 and you guys are in the mid twos, you're very affordable by comparison, which means there's a first-time buyers element to this. Assistance program, less competition. It's time to get in the game. The housing shortage, the law of supply and demand, that we've got an ongoing housing shortage. And by the way, look for the articles in like your local business journals and newspapers that support these positions and go build this. And in fact, we'll talk about this. I'm going to help y'all build the consumer guide for you guys to go through Bold with me. We're going to build one as we go through it and make sure you have one that matches your market. And then the future of interest rates, what's going to drive rates. And so, and then here, and here might be your MOFR. We said, okay, we've got to put out a message. We back it up with an offer for immediate response. And the offer might be something like this. If you have any possible interest in buying or selling a home in the next 12 to 24 months, find out why the right time for you might be right now. Call me to schedule a no obligation strategy session. No obligation, just sit down. And this will become your opportunity to guide and inform. So that being said, I do want to touch on pricing real quick, and I'm going to go through this rather quickly, and then I'm going to tell you how to get all this. But here's a quick pricing perspective, and this comes out of the Shift book as well, and you'll have these slides. When we were in a seller's market, it seemed like everything was in the market. Everything sold, multiple offers, things just went. And goodness gracious. Then, of course, there's this fringe group that wasn't in the market. And then as the market began to change, well, there's these that are in the market, and then there are those that are out of the market. One of the stats to watch, even though days on market might not be climbing dramatically on homes that have sold, they are up. watch for days on market that on active listings and see if that continues to age dramatically, because that's going to tell you that there are just some homes in the market that people are saying no to. The top 20, 30, 40% are going to get all the action. And there are going to be some where the consumer just says no, because they're less, I'm going to say inebriated on real estate today. And then of course, as we get into, a market where it's really a buyer's market, we have fewer in the market. We have some that think they're in the market because they're getting, some showings, but it's, it seems to be bridesmaid instead of a bride, and they just never get there. And then you got a bunch that are out of the market. And so it becomes a game for these players, and the best 20% still get multiple offers. And so it feels, different than it is. And then of course, there could come a point, I don't see us going there in North Carolina, where you're in the market or you're just flat out, and where only so many are going to go. Cindy put in the chat that 150, 151 of the shift book. So I'm going to give you a tool, and I'm going to send you a video on this, because I'm going to go through it really fast, and I'm going to send you a video on me doing this exactly the way I do it. And so you don't need to write all this down. And you're going to have these slides. I'm going to give you the link here in just a minute. But one of the things that, having been through many shifting markets, I found that I had to slow down and really educate people, particularly on pricing. And I would say, can I share with you how as sellers, we win the game today with the right pricing strategy? And can I tell you how intelligent sellers are pricing their home to get the most out of this market? And they always say yes. And I pull out a legal pad, and on the legal pad, I draw this, and I don't put it, don't do this with slides, because it feels like you're selling. I want to educate them. And so on a legal pad, I draw 3 lines, and I say, there's really 3 prices for every home. There's premium, there's market, and there's wholesale. And I draw those 3 lines. And then I come back and I draw 2 vertical lines on each side. And on those vertical lines, I'm going to write improving market or softening market. I'm going to write model home condition or neglect or deferred maintenance. And what I'm explaining to them as I go through this, I said, and by the way, what influences where we price your home is what's the trend, which way is the market moving, and your tolerance for risk about, am I willing to maybe bet too high when a market's maybe indicating that it's going a different direction, or do I just need to get this sold? On the other side, how much time do you have to get the home sold, and what's the condition staging, of the home? And so with that in mind, these are the things that influence price. And I just write this out. And I said, now, of course, and I do this after we've gone through some comparable data, just like you normally would on a CMA. And I would say, based upon everything we looked at together, it looks like market price. I mean, the right price right now, the sweet spot, given the market the way it is, that's going to get the most attention is about 300,000. Now, there are some things that sold not here in the last month or two, but recently that might justify as high as 320. And then, of course, if we need to get an all cash buyer, get you out of here tomorrow, I can probably make that happen for about 270. And then I go to the question. So, Mr. and Ms. Seller, based upon what you know about the market and what you heard, are we an improving market or a softening market? And in a lot of our markets today, they're going to say, well, I think it's softening, interest rates, people are scared. And I'll go, you're right. It's not a scary softening, and yet it is softening. So in fact, there was another line up here we had during the crazy times. I would call it unicorn. And it was unicorn pricing, and people were paying crazy numbers for a home. They're not doing that today, but based upon the most recent sales, this is where we stand. Now, I would put your home in really great condition. And so I'd say it really ranks well in that respect. And yet here's what I find. In today's market, even though we're still in a seller's market and we are trending, more towards the middle, if we go straight to market price, be firm if we have to, that's probably the best strategy. Now, somewhere in between, we could do that. I wouldn't recommend maybe reaching for premium. And yet I'm comfortable with any price here as long as we understand that an overreach, given the trend, might be a bad idea. Given that you want to get to blank by blank, and always take them back to their motivation, right? Want to get back to blank by blank, here's what we need to do. And here's the thing, when they understand what drives this, and I'm giving you a short version of this, they feel educated and they're ready to make better decisions. And I can't tell you how many people, when you do this right, and you're going to have the video on how to do it, they select market or even a little bit below, because we talk about maybe creating an auction-like atmosphere. So buyer's market, of course, they would tend to price here given the conversation. And if we're in an extreme shift, and let's say they want to price it up here at 310 or 320, then I draw a perforated line and I said, do you know what that line represents? And I don't write it in. I asked them first. I said, that's future premium based upon the trend and how pronounced the trend is. And that's future market. That means this is what? Future wholesale. And I said, you remember the toy Slinky? It's like chasing a Slinky down the stairs. And if you're going down the stairs and you try to reach down and grab the Slinky, well, you're just going to crash. If you really want to stop the Slinky, you got to get in front of it. It's no different here than what we have to do in pricing in an extremely shifting market. Now, we're not in that market right now, so that's good. So let me wrap up on a few thoughts, and then I'm going to give you some resources in the chat. And in fact, I'll give you a QR code. If you want to get your phone ready, I'm going to have a QR code up for you to get everything that you want. But let me sum up where we went today. We talked about this importance of delivering on the trust triangle, the logic piece, making sure they understand that you got this, you know this market, you can be the person that they're going to trust, listen to, and ask with all their questions and concerns regarding real estate in your market. The empathy piece, every relationship succeeds or fails one conversation or one missing conversation at a time. And we understand that the conversation is the relationship. And then we learn to do this in just a way that's just genuine, authentic, it's real. We're just another human being going through this walk together with our people, and we're being of service to them. And so if we think about this and your path forward, here's what I would have you take away today. Again, get intentional about the trust triangle. Provide clients with certainty that's lacking in today's market. And you can do that through some kind of consultation. Slow down your consultations and educate them. Slow down to speed up. Study the market and the trends. Down here on the lower left, get your messages and MOFRs right. Now, in fact, here's what we're going to be doing during Bold. For you guys that'll be taking Bold with me, between step 2 and 3 and between step 3 and 4, we're going to do a couple of message and MOFR workshops. We're going to help you work through, hey, what's my messaging that I'm getting out in the conversations that I'm having with the marketing I'm doing and dialing in so it works that I get the best results that I can get. Dial in your pricing presentation because that's vital right now. We're seeing that price reductions are a thing. And communicate your message to everyone. Of course, Bold will help you with that on this journey. So here's my give for you today and my ask. You've got the QR code on the bottom right is how you get all the slides here today, a sample of the presentation guide. And then I'm going to ask every one of you, if you haven't already, please take that upper QR code and join me for the free first step to Bold. If you go to that link, you're just signing up for the free first step. Come hang out with me for a day, and we're going to take you right in that day. We're going to take you right into pushing some of those messages out. We're going to look at text, social media, conversations that will get you to kitchen tables that day. And that's going to put the people in your appointment book and take this message and help you get it out in a way that's going to get you results. So I'll leave this up here. Give me a few ahas. I'm going to leave this up for a second so y'all can scan this, but I want to hear a few ahas from our conversation today.
I'll go.
Go for it. Thanks, Cindy.
Somebody else is. Hey, Steve, I just want to say one thing. Steve was my first Bold coach in 2009. Remember that? And Carrie? A long time ago. So I think the biggest thing that you presented us today was just what's going on with the interest rates so that we can understand it more and bringing it down to a local level, like you shared those slides with Greensboro and Burlington, like what's going on with the pricing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was huge. That's big, so that we understand what we're about. Like everybody should be an economist of our hyper local market. I always
Absolutely.
talk about know your numbers, know what's going on. So yeah. So that
Well,
was
and now you got some insights and just, put them to work. It's our job to then, put that into something. You also have in the chat, those links are in the chat. Let's give a couple more ahas. I mean, I'm sure there's some things going through the brain there. Let's hear from a couple of you.
I like the questions that you gave us about when we are listening to their objections. First asking, what have you heard about the market? What have you heard about the interest rates? Where do you think it's going? I think that's important so we can figure out what we need to focus on when we are handling those objections.
Yeah. Else you just get into Melissa, you just get into telling mode and you don't have any idea whether they're fighting you on the inside or they're agreeing with you or, and you could say, well, and I say, honestly, there's a lot of confusion out there and there's, and you always qualify all this, folks, with, and there's no crystal ball. This is the best information as a professional in this space who lives here every day, has to be able to give you some guidance. And again, there's no crystal ball because crazy things can happen, pandemics. So we don't know what lies around the corner. All right, two more ahas.
Steve, I'd like to just share. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We've got you, Melvina.
Oh my gosh. I mean, just the 3 pricing points when you're sitting down with your people and giving them just the whole perspective of how to price, asking them the right questions. Okay, where do you feel that you are? Do we have deferred maintenance? Where should we price this? I think that's so important. And I think listening is important because once you hear where their heart is and how their thinking process is, it really helps you to be able to zone in on exactly, the direction to take them. So thank you so much for that. Because I usually give 3 and I'm like, is any other agents doing this? Are they just going in for the one? But I so appreciate that. Thank you.
Melvina, you dead on and you got it 100% because, and let them choose the price. And the most important part of the conversation around the trend is that if the trend changes, it makes for an easy conversation about the changes they have to make with it. It's not out of left field about what's influencing this. And it becomes an easy conversation when we need to make price adjustments. Yeah. Thanks. Good catch. One last one. Who's going to take it home for us? All right, the uncomfortable silence time. There it is, right? Okay, come on. Hey, guys. So here's what we're going to do. I want to thank y'all for investing an hour with me today. I trust that you will be joining me for First Step to Bold. And let's continue this conversation, continue this journey, and put it to work on April 5th. And we're going to be at the Burlington Market Center. And that's where we'll be. We'll have lunch provided for you. Do get registered as we then make sure we have the appropriate lunch numbers and counts and everything, and make sure you're getting all the communication. So I'm going to put that slide up one more time with the QR codes in case you missed it. And unless there's anything else, I just want to thank you for being with me today. So long, folks. I'll leave it up there for a second. Tricia, Ronald, thank you. Appreciate it. Yes. And again, we will send you the pricing presentation video as well. So you'll have all that. All right. Thank you, folks.